Hi there, and welcome back to the Learn to Code by Writing Space Invaders course. In our last lesson, we've got as far as having the Space Invaders moving, being able to shoot them, having the explosions, and as I say, the last thing we did was to add the score. So we've basically got the vast majority of our game programmed. But one thing we haven't yet looked at is sound, and that's what we're going to have a look at in this lesson. So let's have a look at the real arcade Space Invaders. Now for this I'm using an emulator called MAME, and again if you have a look at my other videos you'll see how to do that. But if we listen to the game as it starts, you'll see that one of the iconic sounds is this sort of heartbeat in the background where we have 4 notes being played, and that's continuous as the game plays. You'll then see as we start shooting and hitting aliens, we have other sound effects coming in. And these are the ones that we're going to try and mimic then in our own version of Space Invaders. So let's get ready for this lesson. So I'm loading in my previous lesson's code and I'm saving it as lesson 21. Then coming in here and just change this little note at the top. Sound effects in Take-80 work in a very similar way to the sprite system. So up at the top left corner, you'll see that we have our various tabs to get to certain parts of our game editing system. And one of those is the sound effects editor, which is this icon here. And if we click on that, that takes us through to our sound effect editing screen. And what we have here is we are able to create various special effects for sounds. Just like with our sprites, we have an index number. So each sound effect that we create has an index number, and we're going to use a special SFX command back in our code, which will call up this sound and then tell the system how we want to play it. So very much like we use the SPR, the sprite command, to tell the system which sprite we want to use and where on the screen we want it to be. So we're going to do the heartbeat sound first, and for that we're going to use a very simple sound. The way that our sound effects editor works is that we have a range of properties we can adjust for this particular sound effect. We have wave, we have volume, we have an arpeggiator, and we have the pitch editor. So the first we're going to have a look at then is this idea of a wave. And this then is the waveform for our sound. And these are denoted along the side here. And there's a couple of pre-made ones. So this bottom one is a square wave. We then have a triangle wave, a sort of ramp wave. And then we have ones that are not really defined. And these end up being what we call white noise. And we're going to be using those for our explosion effects. But the first one we're going to use then is this square wave. So if I click on that, that takes me through to the wave editor, and you can see here that we simply have a simple square wave being formed, and we can hear that in action. So if we go back to this little icon here, back to what we call our envelopes, I can press and hold the space key in, and that should make a sound. So we have there our simple tone. I have a little octave selector down here. So we have a little keyboard to play sound. So again, if I click on that, so you can see I can change the sound. I can also change the octave that this keyboard works in. So if I want a lower sound, I can go down to octave 2. And you can see we can get that sound working. And for this particular one, where we're just going to use a simple tone, that's pretty much all we need to do. And what we can do now is we can sort of say, okay, it's going to sound something like this. And that will form our heartbeat. Okay? So for this particular sound effect, we're not going to bother with any of the other envelopes. But we'll come across those when we come to do our other sound effects, our explosion effects. So we now have sound effect in index 0 being our simple tone. So let's go back to our code editor and let's see how we actually put that into our software. We need to make this sound effect happen whenever the aliens take a step. So if we go to our function for doing that, so let's look in here, and we called it move aliens. So if I click that and then find our move aliens function, so in here we have our function, and we know that at this point here we have a move counter which is controlling the speed at which our aliens move. And once that gets to 0, once we get inside this if statement, at that point we're actually going to take an alien step. So this is where we really want to do our sound. So I'm going to give myself some space in there. And I'm going to just make a note for myself, do the stepping sound. So to begin with, all I'm going to make it do is play a note. So we're going to do a sound effect. And the sound effect then, we first of all give it the ID number of the sound effect we want to use. So just like we did with the sprite. So we're using sound effect number 0, which was that simple tone that we created. We're going to give it then the pitch of, or the actual note we want to play. And this is a number between 0 and 95. And I'm going to put in for this, I'm going to put in 10, which will be a reasonably low note. And again, we can have a play with that in a little bit and see what happens. We then want to put in the duration of this sound. And I'm going to use, and that's in the number of ticks that we use. So remember, every time that tick function runs, it's a 60th of a second. So we're going to put in a number there, and let's do it at around about a 10th of a second. So that's 6 ticks. And after that, then we want to say what channel this is going to be in, and that really means we have 4 channels of sound in this. So in other words, we can play 4 sounds at the same time. And I'm going to use channel 0 for my stepping sound effect. We can then put after that a volume. So I'm going to put in just the volume goes from 0 to 15. So let's put that in at around about half volume, about 8. And that should now give us a sound effect as our alien step. So let's try that out. So I'll do Control R. And we should hear now, in the background, we now have that tone being generated each time our aliens take a step. But what we want to achieve now is that 4-note descending scale as the aliens step. So let's see how we can implement that. So obviously we're going to need to change the note or the pitch of the note each time we make a step. So we're going to need some software to control that. So back into the code then. So we have these 4 notes which we have to play at different times as the aliens are stepping. And if you think about it, we've actually done something very, very similar to that where we did the alien frames. So remember, we had some animation frames, and each time the alien takes a step, we use the next frame in our animation. And then when we get to the last frame, we use this modulo operator down here to loop us back round to the beginning. So we're going to do something very similar now with our sounds. So let's go back up to the very top of our code and let's create a variable to do that. So up here we have our alien move num frames and we have our alien move frame counter. So we're going to do something very similar to this. So we're going to say our alien step sound notes, and this is going to tell us how many notes we want to play in our scale. So I'm going to set that to 4, but again you'll be able to have a play with this afterwards and see what sounds better for you. And we're then going to say our alien step sound counter, and we're going to set that equal to 0 to begin with. So really what's going to happen is our counter is going to go from 0 to 1 to 3 to 2 to 3, and then when it gets to 4, we're going to be using a modulo operator using this particular number. Okay, so of course 4 will then go back to 0 again as we use that code. But again, if you change this, obviously then it will go to different notes. So let's go and see how we implement that then in our code. So again, we want to go to our move aliens function. So down in here, we obviously want to change this value. So this is the actual pitch of our note. So let's work out what that needs to be. So we know that we have our alien step sound counter, and that controls the actual note itself, and we're going to say that needs to have 1 added to it. So we're going to simply do, and let me copy that again and put that in there, +1. So that will add 1 onto it. We then want to make sure that we limit it by doing that modulo operator. So we're going to say alien step sound counter equal to, and the alien step sound counter, then modulo, and then our alien step sound, and I'm pretty sure we called it notes. And let me just go to a smaller font size so we can see everything happening here. So this should now give us a counter from 0 up to 3 and then back to 0 again. Our base note here is our 10, and we want then it to be counting down from there. So we want to start off at our high note and then count down to our low note. So we're going to take away our alien step sound counter, and that should now give us a descending note scale. So let's run that and see what happens. And there we have our descending scale of 4 notes. Again, because we've used our variables here, we can have a little play to see what sounds better. So let's go back up to where we defined those variables. And we've seen that we've defined them here. We could also now put in an alien step sound bass note, and at the moment we've got that equal to 10. Okay, so remember, if I copy that and then go back to my move aliens function, so again, I've said before, it's good to sort of have these controlled by variables. So if we're going to start playing with our sound effects, we need to use that variable there. So we now are able to control this through a variable, control the number of steps we take. So let's go up and see if we can do that. And up here then, okay, so wherever it was, okay. So let's use a lower bass note and see what happens there. So that's sounding pretty good. We could try and see what it sounds like if we have more notes. Let's try it with 6 notes. And I'm not quite sure if that sounds quite right for Space Invaders. So let's go back to our 4 notes. And I think that will leave it there for our stepping sound. Okay, so we've got our alien stepping sound in place now. So let's have a look at our ship firing sound now. So let's go into our sound effects editor. And we saw that with our stepping sound, we were just using the simple square wave and just basically playing a note. What we now want to do is to actually design a more complex sound, and we're going to use something called an envelope. So let's first of all move across to our second sound effects. Remember, this IDX, the index number, is similar to the way we use our sprites. So I'm now going to design sound number 1. And what we can do here is we'll first off start with it on this square wave. So again, we still have our basic tone. So let's just move it up an octave. So we have our tone coming in at the moment. But what we can now do is we can play with the shape of this sound using our volume, on our arpeggiator, and our pitch. And we're really just going to concentrate at the moment on our volume and our pitch. And really what this lets us do is control, as the sound is playing, whether the volume changes and whether the pitch changes. So let's have a look first at our volume. And we can see at the moment that we have all of these bars, so these little bar graphs, and you can simply just click to change them. But if we click along here, I can see that I can set the volume to be a constant volume. And if I now play that note, I can play space, or I can just click on here. And you can see that we have a constant volume. But what I could do, for some sort of bullet effects, what I tend to want to have is my volume building up very quickly and then tailing off as the explosion or the bullet sound tails off. So if I play this now, you can hear that we've now got that pulse of volume. I can do the same with my pitch. So again, I'm just going to put the volume back up to full so we can hear the pitch effect taking place. So at the moment we have it all staying at exactly the same pitch. But what I can do is I can get the sound's pitch to change as it goes on. So let's say we want to make it rise up and then tail down. So you can see there, as the sound plays, we get that rising pitch and then that falling pitch. And what we can do really then is we can have a play with these two envelopes together to see if we can make a firing sound for our gun. So let's try that by using up here. Again, I'm just simply drawing a shape for my sound. We're starting to get that sort of pulsing sound as it comes in. And again, our pitch change then adds to that. But the sound we really want to have in here is a little bit different to a normal tone. So what we can do is we can go back to our wave section. And we saw that we have different types of wave here. So let's just try this with different waveforms. So that was a square wave at the bottom, which gives us a nice tone. This is a triangular wave. So if we try that, you can see we get a different sound coming in. We've now got a sawtooth waveform. That gives us a more sort of buzzy sound. But we can try these ones here, are actually what are known as white noise. So there isn't actually a waveform defined, so they're left just with sort of background noise, sort of the hiss sound. And if we try that, you can see we get more of a sort of like a rocket engine sound going on. So let's start playing with that then. So we've got our volume. We want it building up and then tailing off. So we've got it tailing off there. Our pitch then will have that building up and then coming down. Sounds a bit slow at the moment, so let's take our speed up. And you can see we've got much better sort of sound coming in there now. Let's try a bit higher pitch. And we're starting to get a bit of a better sound. Let's just try bringing that down a bit further with our there. And our volume effect. Let's try and get the volume building up faster and tailing off faster. down to a near zero sound. Try maybe a higher pitch. A bit higher. Maybe about there. So again, have a play as much as you want with that sound, but I think I'm going to leave that then as my firing sound for my player bullet. Okay, so again, we've designed that in sound number 1. So let's make sure we can actually play that at the correct position. So let's go back into our code editor. Our player bullets are fired by the function called checkPlayerFire. So if we go down to that one, we'll see that this is where we actually check if the fire button is being pressed. And then we come through here and finding an available bullet to fire. And if we've got one, at this point here, this is where we actually mark it as being fired. So that's where we need to put our sound effect in. So we're going to use our sound effects command. And again, the first number we use after that is the sound ID, which for us, for the firing bullet, is number going to be 1. The note then, we're going to have a bit of a play with that. So I'm going to stick that in at the moment at about 40, because we knew it was reasonably high, that note. After that comes the duration, and this is how many ticks it's going to play for. So let's put that in for 10 at the moment. Again, we're going to have to play with these numbers to get them to be the right ones. The channel then, so we used channel 0 for our stepping sound. If we use channel 0 for this, then our player firing bullets will overwrite any stepping sound. So we want to use it on a different channel so we can have stepping sounds and firing sounds at the same time. So I'll put this on channel number 1. And our volume then wants to be, let's play it at full volume and see what happens with that. So we got that all in place now. Just put a space in there. And let's run that and see what happens. So we've got our stepping sound going on. And if I now fire some bullets, so the sound seems to be a bit clipped off at the moment, so our duration's probably a bit too short. So let's go back in here and we'll put our duration up to, let's put up to 20 and see how that sounds. So I think we're now getting our full firing sound. And you'll see as well, because we're playing all of our firing sounds on the same channel, if I fire one bullet, we get the full sound. If I fire multiple bullets, the new bullet firing sound overwrites the old one. So we can actually fire off lots of bullets at the same time. So let's just have a little play with the pitch on that one. Let's just put it up a little bit further and see what that sounds like. A bit better to me, and I think that'll do me for my player bullet sound. But again, you can play about with these as much as you want just to get exactly the sound you want. So let's just come out of that and back into our code. So this really just leaves us one more sound effect to add, which is the alien explosions. So again, we're going to go back into our sound effects editor. And we're now going to design sound number 2 for our alien explosions. So again, because this is more of a white noise explosion effect, we're going to use our white noise wave generator. Okay, so again, we now have that. Again, using a nice low pitch will give us that sort of rumbling effect. But let's have a look now. So our volume again, for an explosion, we tend to want to start off with a very sharp volume to begin with, and then it tailing off as the explosion finishes. So we should be now that sort of effect. We can have a play with our pitch, and we could actually start off with a lower pitch, have a slightly raised, and then tail it back off again. Along those lines. On my volume, what happens here on the volume, if we take it right down to just one little red dot at the end here, that actually stops the volume. If I wanted to, I could have it just hanging on at the end. Like that. Okay? Or maybe just take it down so it actually does finish. Actually, no, we'll leave it in so that what we can do then is we can play with the duration in our sound effect to have it sort of hanging in just at the end there. So we've now got our volume effect, our pitch. Let's try it at a slightly higher pitch, see what that sounds like. Maybe not. No, I think we do want to stick with a lower sound effect here. And that should probably do it. I don't think we want to increase the speed of our sound. No. So let's just stick with that. So we have a nice sort of rumbly sound effect there for our explosion. Okay, so that's sound effect number 2. So let's go back into our code. So again, we now need to find out where we're going to place that. And again, if we look for our check bullet collisions, okay, this is where we are checking to see if any of our bullets have hit an alien. And down here somewhere, this is where we've actually hit an alien. Okay, so we have now hit an alien. We've increase the player score, and at this point then we'll obviously want to play the sound effect for exploding an alien. So we're going to use our sound effect command again. It's going to be sound number 2. We want to use a low pitch, so let's try it at 5 to begin with. Let's set the duration then to something slightly longer at that. We want to play on a different channel again so that we can have explosions taking place as well as the stepping sound and our player bullets. And let's play it at full volume. Okay, so let's see how that sounds. So we've got our firing point. Oh. Again, I think that sounds a bit clipped off at the end, so let's just increase our duration a wee bit here. Let's take that up to, let's say, take it to 30 and see how that sounds. That sounds a bit better. And I think that will probably do us for our sound effects. Okay, so skipping back out of here. So we've now got our game almost ready. The last thing we need to do then, of course, is to make the aliens fight back. So we're going to look at that in the next lesson. But first of all then, let's make sure that we save our work. And again, so we're saving it now as lesson 21. I think I've already named it that. So we'll say I don't want to overwrite it. So yes, save it as lesson 21. And we'll work on the alien bullets in the very next lesson. See you soon. Bye. Don't forget to visit the course pages for this project. There you'll be able to download the code for this lesson and get lots of extra hints and tips. You'll also get access to all my other programming, electronics and gaming projects. All the links are in the description below. For more games programming, electronics projects and retro gaming, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit my website.